This is the Amplify Your Business with Matt J Hanham podcast, where I explore the entrepreneurial landscape and have candid conversations with inspiring individuals who are crushing it in their space to help you get amplified in business and in life. Welcome to the show. It's another Friday, and it's time for an Inside Out episode where we're going to smash through the power of storytelling in business. So what does that mean exactly? There's quite a lot of talk about storytelling with social media and the ability to create content, that buzzword content, and it's just an amazing medium and a way that we've always been able to communicate a vision, a goal, an action or a set of actions that we want people to take in right back to, I guess, caveman days. And storytelling is just such a key part of the human community and how we communicate with people. But what does it mean what does it mean to bring that into business? And what does storytelling in business mean and look like? And why is that different to us telling a story about, to our kids? It's a way of educating, a way of brand building, a way of, I guess, building rapport. So we're moving into an era where consumers just want to feel close to the businesses they buy from. They want to know the story and the why, the why behind why the business exists, what their purpose is. Because let's face it, they just have the choice now. There is so much more choice for the majority of markets, industries, products, services, whatever you want to buy. There's typically a lot more choice, and so they want to know that the values of who's selling them the product, who's created the product, makes sense to them. There's a massive, this is a massive advantage for small businesses. Where they get to take charge, or they can leave big companies in their wake. Because if you're talking about, quarterly earnings, and that's one of the key drivers for you as a company, well, it becomes a lot harder to sell and tell a story compared to let's call it what it is. And we're in Australia, and some of I think it's Woolworths have now quite a considerable number of, let's say, wine labels where they obviously use different vineyards and mass produce wine, and they sell it for, let's say $9 a bottle, $10 a bottle, whatever. It's just an arbitrary number. But that $10 a bottle compared to the $17.95, $22.95 bottle that you just bought from this vineyard that you happened to be driving past when you were out in the valley, and you got to meet the winemaker, and you can see their dog and the ute they're driving around, and there's a story and some passion and some life. Big difference, right? And that's, I think, why we quite happily pay more and consume that $22.95 bottle rather than that $9.95 bottle. So that's where the small businesses, or the smaller businesses, the medium-sized businesses, can take sort of charge and leave those big companies in their wake, because that big company, that listed company, but they don't really have those stories to bring. They'll try, but they don't have the level of depth and understanding that they can bring like a small business. There's an article, why business storytelling matters and how to do it. And it explores the benefits of storytelling within your business. And it basically suggests a bunch of things, but included that stories beget stories, and that sort of connects people together. Storytelling humanizes your brand and provides a link between just a logo or a style or a flavor, and connects it with humans, and helps you bring together a different feeling, a different meaning to a product or a service. Great stories connect you to something bigger, potentially a movement or a type of way of thinking and feeling and being. A story may be the only thing that works to convey a particular vision that you have for a company. Like Zembreros, I know they donate. I think it's a meal per meal, and they have a big counter running on the side wall in their Mexican restaurants, and it basically they're conveying a big vision and a story, and that story is what I think And I know people will choose to go and buy a meal from there rather than potentially a competitor because they bring something different to even providing just lunch that day. You could have had your lunch anywhere, but you choose to align yourself with a story. Stories can spark a lot of change, and you can also sort of transfer your values through the story and let people know what's going on. Storytelling gets to the heart. This is a quote. Storytelling gets to the heart of what you're trying to communicate in a way that any number of memos, mission statements, and pseudo-smart sounding theoretical babble never will. My approach, with all of this is that you've just got to look for those opportunities to extract, authentic story. I mean, you can create stories, but it's often the small things, and it's the places where people can find some similarities in you and your approach. I mean, like I talked about before, there's a vineyard and the vineyard dog, and maybe they use the dog in some of the marketing and the videos and that, and clearly it's the animal's part of the family. And then to someone that has pets themselves, like there might be super subtle little parts of the story, but those subtle parts of the story can build a connection, and they can sort of just gradually reel you in more so than the production plant that's just pumping out that wine. And when you've been to a place and you can see the vines and you can feel, the ambience and the atmosphere, it's a totally different situation when you're sitting back in your own couch, or sitting on your couch, or in your living room, you're having dinner, and you crack that bottle and you pour it in, and you just remember, as it's in your glass, you can smell this wine, and you remember being in the physical location. You remember the dog. Your dog might be sitting there at the floor next to you. These are all elements that can create and form a story. And this is what it means to business, because we like to consume things that we like and that align with our values and make us feel, make us feel good, feel alive, feel happy. It's not, we don't always buy the best possible product or the best possible service there is available. We buy the one that we feel is going to be the best for us. I was thinking about this topic, and I came across, or I started to think about when I was giving money to charity. So I realized, and I had just a quick sort of think back, and I realized when something comes up on my news feed, or when I'm sort of confronted with an email or something about a story or a common connection, say someone has a particular illness and they're raising money, or someone's doing a charity bike ride for this or that, I realize that the majority of times when I give money to charity, it's related to people that I know raising that money. So there's some sort of like common connection, and the reason why that probably comes from people I know. I don't think it's necessarily about just people I know, but it comes from people I know are sharing a story. So they're sharing these items and there's aspects of the story that there'll be some similarities with, like maybe I have a niece and they're talking about their niece or whatever that looks like. But I've realized that they've had the opportunity or the chance to sort of share the story with me. And it made me realize that is typically when I give money to charity. It's around those, when I go to an event and I get to hear people's stories, or when I'm just, sent an email by someone who's doing, who's doing something for a cause. That's where it comes from. I rarely give to an organization that just asks and, doesn't move me. So whether they call, whether they email, whether they're standing in the street. I mean, I might just drop a couple of dollars in a tin if that's what's going on. But, rarely do I give money to a charity that just sort of asks me, and it has to move me, and the story has to provide me with the jog, the stop. The story will stop me, and I'll stop and think and ponder, on what someone with that health issue or what it looks like, or what it might be like if someone in my family had that issue, and that sort of moves me to help. Now, just because I rarely give to these organizations that just ask quickly and don't share their stories doesn't mean they're not deserving. I mean, they might be very deserving as an organization, have a great cause, but I'm just not influenced by them because they haven't found a way to get in and share that story with me. And that's sort of exactly, charities are still a business of sorts, and they still need to like raise money just the same way that we need to get customers or clients to pay us to do what we do. And it's just amazing that even at that level, so even in a very, very noble cause, and let's say there was two different charities that were both supporting or raising money for research into some rare cancer treatment. The one that's telling the story and bringing out the stories is probably more likely to earn and raise significantly more money than the one that hasn't delivered stories but just asked and said, look, we're raising money for this issue. Could you please help? Last night I went to a comedy show with an English guy called Michael McIntyre, and I went with my wife Tash. And as I sip on as I sip on my bottled water right next to me, it reminded me of how he delivers a series of jokes around bottled water, and particularly talks about when you're in a restaurant and I'm sure you can relate to this, how many of us would reject would you like tap water or still? And we opt for a bottled water only to then pour it over ice made from tap water. In both instances, whether it's tap water or whether we've paid for the water, we end up with some form of tap water in our drink. But it's the choice represents sort of our values and the story we tell ourselves. We want to and who we want to tell others about who we are, and that's where this is basically branding at its core. And it's funny how we need to show and present with a particular story for ourselves, whether we call ourselves the surfer or whether we call ourselves a rapper. We like to present and show, and we like community. And this like of community is exactly why stories bind us together. And I may have got a little bit off track there with my line of thinking, but if you could just think to yourself, like, what is it that sells you? How often do you go in, perhaps except for something like an electronic product, and truly make a decision, to buy something based on just the merits? And how much have you been influenced by the brand, the story? And when I say brand, they'll often bring with them a story because you've probably spent many years being marketed to, and that this brand stands for this brand means that. This is the kind of person that utilizes this brand. This is who drives a Jaguar or a Mercedes, and this is who drives a Volkswagen. I mean, we have a lot of different reasons why we choose to purchase something, and we often don't purchase it just based on the merits. So, yeah, it's just often more important than the product. And as I said before, for small to medium enterprises, it is their absolute competitive advantage if they use it wisely. Consumers will always pay more for a brand they like. I referenced earlier paying the $22.95 a bottle rather than $9.95 a bottle for a beautiful red that they bought from a winery which they've obviously visited before and had a connecting story. They'll pay $22.95 instead of $9.95. Consumers or people will wait at a restaurant and wait in the line longer based on the recommendations and the stories they've heard from people that have been to that restaurant. They'll wait. They'll travel further and they'll tell all their friends after. And that's why the story is so significant, because your only sort of opportunity to tell an authentically different story than every one of your competitors. I mean, if everyone was just selling the same hamburger, there would still be, there was 4 burger shops in the street and they were all selling exactly the same hamburger. Let's say they actually had the same kitchen out the back, but no one knew. There'd always be 1 or 2 that are significantly selling more hamburgers, and it's because of the people that would be serving at the front and the story they would be telling and showing the customers out the front. So that is your advantage. So stop trying to compete, especially if you're a small business and you're trying to compete with your big, your big competitor, like what is it that you can do differently? Like what do you have to show some authenticity, to show some story, and to say, well, okay, we might not be that big, but this is what else we can bring to the table. This is how else we approach things. This is what we can do for you. And maybe you've got a client or someone who doesn't want to just be a number at that big competitor of yours, and they would rather that personalized service. They would rather that offering that you have, even if it's more expensive. So what can you do now? I mean, I think work out, like if you feel like your story is lacking in your business, you can work out, have a think about, if you haven't got all your vision and your vision documentation and that done, a vision, a mission, a set of values, and you haven't got that infused through your business, well, that's something to start with. But once you get there, have a look and try and brainstorm and understand your authentic differences, because there is always something different. I mean, look, I run a digital marketing company. We create content, we distribute it. I'm actually a chartered accountant. I mean, that's kind of rare. So I'll often use it in meetings and conversations to say, well, look, I've got this type of experience, and I've also run and worked with these types of businesses, and I can bring this to the table to have an additional set of skills. Find out what it is that makes you different. Maybe you're an amazing guitar player and you can be that amazing guitar finance guru guy. I mean, I don't really care what it is, but there is something that you'll have, because we all have our uniquenesses, and we need to actually use them to stand out. And storytelling is the way. It's been the way now. It was the way 10 years ago. It'll be the way in 200 years, and it was the way hundreds of years ago. There was paintings on the side of cave walls, and effectively they're just telling stories to help communicate, motivate, move, educate people. We love to live and operate in communities, and community is really around stories. So anyway, understand those authentic differences, work out what your vision is, listen and learn from those that engage with you, and keep people informed. Stay connected with them and keep telling and building your story. So whoever's listening to you, you can craft your tribe of sorts, people that are authentically engaged in what you're saying, what you're speaking about, whether that's, about your finance company, or whether that's about your marketing company, or whether that's about your muesli bar company. We all have the ability to tell stories and create connections with people. That's it for this week, guys. So please check me out on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you want to find me, at Matt J Hanham, MattJhanham. Please hit the subscribe button. Please leave a review. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. I don't really mind. And what would be super cool is if you would share this episode with someone who you think might like to hear it. Love digging into these type of topics lately. And if you've got any ideas or something you'd like to hear me talk about, I would love to sort of dig into any of those. Obviously, I've got plenty of opinions around the storytelling, business, social media, all those aspects. But lots of different insight that I would love to bring to you guys. I'm going to bring this every week. And I'm really enjoying digging into these different topics and stories, and having a look at other content that's out there in the market. And I love to share my thoughts with you. So if you're enjoying this, please hit the share, pump it to a friend of yours. And until next time, I shall see you soon. Goodbye.